My behaviour and communications on this podcast are not an accurate reflection of how I interact in my other businesses. Basically, I don't ever swear at children. If this podcast causes you distress of any kind, either by what I say or who I am, then do yourself a favour and go away. It's me, Gemma from People Building, and I'm doing a podcast today which I strongly suspect may be a repeat of a podcast that I did in the past, but I can't be bothered to go back through all my old titles and double check. And anyway, sometimes you need to hear a message more than once before you get it, so that's the justification that I'm going with today. So the topic for today is all about lowering your expectations. I know that's not very NLP of me, because you know a lot of the NLPers are like, focus on the positives, and it's just really unrealistic because life does not serve us in that way. Sometimes it's helpful to be a bit more realistic about the serving that you're going to get in this thing called life. But in addition, it can actually be really helpful if you lower your expectations completely, because when you do, you actually start to get impressed by perhaps some of the more everyday stuff, like butterfly, for example, suddenly becomes really impressive if you have lowered your expectations of what a good day should be. You see a butterfly, it's already a good day. Happy times. Granted, sometimes finding a butterfly is harder than it used to be, maybe 20 years ago. But let's bypass that example and give you a real example. Okay, so the butterfly example didn't sound like a good example when I was saying it. However, 2 days later I went to my mum's house, and she lives in an ex-council house in quite a suburban area right next to a main road, and a massive pheasant showed up in the garden. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the pictures of Fred the pheasant, that's what she named him, who stayed in the garden for a good couple of hours and was absolutely beautiful. The chances of seeing a bird like that in a garden are slim to none, and it's never happened before. My example worked. We have a training coming up. I'm not here to sell the training. I could just sell the training, couldn't I? We've got a hypnotherapy diploma training coming up in the next few weeks, and the training is going to be taking place at a hotel that I used to use years and years ago and haven't used in a very long time. And the reason why we switched was because they kept putting their prices up, but because they came to know me quite well and they knew that I knew my way around the place, they became a little bit lazy in their service. So they would maybe neglect to refresh the room halfway through the day. And then as the trainer, I was also emptying the bins and going off to fetch more teas and coffees for people. But every year they still put the prices up, even though the service was decreasing. So we switched to a different venue. Unfortunately, we've got to go back to the old venue for just 1 week, as our new venue is currently booked up for the week where we have this training taking place. When my assistant told me that we were going to be going back to the Holiday Inn instead of using the Boxmoor Trust that we usually use these days, it reminded me of an incident that had happened there one day, which now I look back on and laugh, but at the time left me somewhat perplexed. I'd gone into the room that morning and discovered that whilst we had teas and coffees available for the delegates, we didn't have any milk. So I went upstairs to the reception desk, and there was a guy on reception who, you know how it is when your mind's really busy, perhaps doing something completely different, and then somebody jots you out of that moment with a question which you were not expecting? I think in hindsight that's probably what happened to him that day. So I approached the desk and said, "Oh, morning, would it be okay if we could have some milk?" And he looked up at me and said, "What do you mean, milk?" And then I was confused. I mean, when I've asked for milk before, no one has said, "What do you mean, milk?" So I said, "Like the kind from a cow." And he then looked a little bit irritated by this, and he said, "For what purpose do you need the milk?" And I said, "For the tea." Now in my head, at this point in time, I'm thinking, this is fairly obvious, no? So then he responds with, What do you want me to put it in? I mean, is this not a bizarre conversation? And I said, I don't know, a jug or the little plastic cups, something like that. At which point he stormed off and he went and got the milk. So, I got the job done, but it was just a very bizarre conversation. And it was just the perfect embodiment of what my experience of using that venue was actually like. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I had an expectation that we're paying quite a lot of money for this venue now. Therefore, I expect the service to be pristine, like on the money, like it needs to be good. And that was not the experience that happened in reality. What happened in reality is that I was often dealing with confused people who didn't really know what was going on, and who were sometimes quite rude to us. And now I have to go back to this venue again. But here's the point. The point is that I'm not going in with an expectation of perfection, because if I do, then I will spend a week being disappointed. Instead, I'm going in with an expectation of having a great time on the training and having some fun with my delegates, and probably just kind of making our way through and making do with the venue that we have. If you can make your expectations of other people or life in general not just realistic, but actually a little bit lower, then you give yourself more opportunities for pleasant surprises and for discovering ways in which you can become satisfied that you didn't even know that you could. It can be helpful to be satisfied with the little things in life. And although in NLP we encourage you to dream big and set big goals for yourself to keep yourself occupied, I personally feel that sometimes that can take our focus away from maybe taking some of the smaller and actually quite fundamentally important things in life away from our attention. If you can be inspired or feel happy because you went outside in nature and you saw the first daffodil of spring, or because you saw a bird that is quite rare and you haven't seen it for a while, or something like that. If you can do those sorts of things and still get a sense of satisfaction, then that is a successful accomplishment. That means that you've been able to find appreciation in the smaller things in life and have perhaps lowered your expectations of what having a good day looks like. So that is all from me today. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to this video, clicking the notifications bell after you do so in order to receive a notification each time I upload a new video. But for now, thank you for your time with me today. It's been a pleasure to speaking to you. I really can't talk today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!